Everybody, we are going to be going on to our next video. I have just came out with a new concept of which, if anybody follows my YouTube channel, you guys know that I have all these pretty contemplative ideas that are pretty, out of the ordinary and kind of hard to understand. And it's been dawning on me, like I, I've, I finally figured out the mystery of the universe, whereas science is gun ho to basically anchor that everything has to be tied to science, where the point of the matter is anybody can make anything scientific. It's just a matter of is this something that is really very scientific or even needs to be scientific? And I tend to find that that is probably mankind's weakness, is thinking, oh, science, well, that's just how it has to be, and there's no other way to look at it, and then they close the door, which is fine because everybody is entitled to their own ideas and beliefs, and there's nothing wrong with science because we thrive off science, and it's useful and it's a tool that we can use, but it's also overused and misused of a term, to where they just like to science, to to think, oh, you must respect this, you must respect that, because it's almost like they're trying to talk down on somebody, as if, do you realize how simple it is to know that if grass is green, grass is green? So at the same time, at the tone of attitude that they come at you, they're basically calling you stupid, because they're trying to make it out like, oh, you don't realize that the grass is green, and look at the grass is green. And they overuse the argument, and that's my biggest thing. It's like, not everything has to go down to I'm right, you're wrong, and science this, science that, when it's spirituality and other certain things. Okay, now here's another thing that I was realizing, of what's going on in this universe is, it's actually, there's a lot of stuff I'm going to have to cover, and it's kind of all on the top of my head. My mouse might die, but I got a spare battery charge in here. So basically, the way the universe works is, all right, so let's say, man, my mouse is fucking dying. Okay, this is the universe, the boundaries. Unive are, I'm pretty sure that's right. I'm horrible at spelling, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's spelled wrong. Okay, so for example, this is something that I think people tend to find hard to understand. Like, if we're mapping the universe, okay, one may argue, okay, well, we are here. All right, so remember, there's Earth. When you keep zooming in, boom, and then you have all these infinite amounts of space and more shit everywhere, right? But, that's one person's argument. One person can say, oh, yeah, well, that's where we are at right there, but that's what is actually as expected to them, or to maybe a certain group of people, right? So the thing is there's no difference of trying to say, oh, yeah, well, Earth is here, as opposed to saying Earth is here, when it's equal and opposite, because it's there in space, and it occupies a portion of space. So therefore, it doesn't matter of the actual coordinate of, oh, northeast, south, or west. That's what people don't understand. They're like, oh, well, we're there, So now that I know that we're there, that answers everything. That solves everything. But it doesn't. That doesn't solve anything to know that we're here, even though it wouldn't make any difference if we were there, or there, or there, or who's to say? How could anybody even prove that there is there and there's there, or there's there, or there is not there? So there's no way to really. But we can reference. We can say, and to our reference, we correlate it to be here. But we can't say that is actually as expected, because that's our flawed natures to, where that's why God gave us space and time to figure it out, because we needed to figure out what was actually as expected, because everybody was all confused about it and always asking, and this gets down to a level and a point where it gets stupid, redundant, obnoxious, to a point where, what, everyone wants to make it such a big deal. We're going to have to make sure everybody learns and figures out, what this is all about. So what this is all about is separation from the Creator, for the simple fact of it's mankind's nature to say, hey, you know what, I need my privacy, I need space, leave me alone. Therefore, why do you think we have all this? Why do you think we have so much space? And when we're like coming at the Creator in a tone of voice like, God, give me some space, give me some room to breathe, leave me alone. And that's what is actually as expected, which is people don't accept that. They don't want to understand it. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to think that, oh, well, maybe there's some sort of explanation. But that's what is actually as expected. And it's not uncommon so when somebody can't understand that concept and it's based on the law of averages, because you got to remember, he can simulate an average the universes that could potentially have existed. So he already knew everything that was actually as expected. So everyone was getting stupid, and then everyone was all asking, well, how do you actually know that is as expected? How do you actually know that? That's Lucifer's biggest problem, in my opinion. I'm not going to break into that whole argument with Lucifer and God, but if you watch my previous videos, I talk a lot about it. So anyway, everybody has this whole freaking stupid argument and so perplexity with the Creator of always wondering, well, what is actually expected? Because what is actually expected for one person may not actually be expected to another person. And that's what Lucifer's argument was to God is, you can't know everything that is actually expected, because what is actually expected to you may not actually be expected for everyone else. And that's why the Creator was like, you guys I'm going to give you guys your own space, let you breathe, and be by yourself. Because supposedly that's going to make you feel better, right? When everyone's all mad and arguing, hey, leave me alone, I need my own space. Boom, that's what happens. But remember, this result occurs based on the simulation that has to correct the flaw. So it's correcting itself, because the simulation, if it weren't to have automatically have known how to make the situation as expected, it could potentially have just been catastrophic and just nothing would have ever mattered. Nothing would have existed. And that's what I'm getting into on explaining of the universe here is a better question for science to ask. There are a few perspectives and questions that come with this. A couple things are, one, we have to wonder, is it possible that there's a limitation to the options? Is there a limitation to the options? Most people don't even think twice about even potentially thinking, maybe I should look more into this. Maybe there's more ideas I can come up with. Because they think they got it all figured out. So they got it all figured out. There's nothing else to look into. And what do you think is happening right now? We're trying to figure out what is actually expected. Because that's what he wants us to do. Because we wanted to be a smart ass to him. And it's like slapping somebody in the face. Like, boom. Trying to say, oh, if the grass is green, the grass is green or whatever, like how I was saying earlier. So you're like basically slapping somebody in the face by your tone of voice. So when you go slapping God in his face based on the simulation, because this result occurs based off the simulation, and this reduces the result to its most useful beneficiary to work in our benefit, because otherwise it would be catastrophic. It would just fall apart and collapse. It would totally, nothing would exist. Nothing would ever exist, because he would have done nothing for anybody. He would have just sat there and just let everybody fucking be nothing. And that's what he was trying to explain the concept of, and so you could have the perspective of it. I could have the perspective of it. I have the perspective of it. You have the perspective of it. But you just are not thinking deep enough. Those that are doubters and the ones of unbelief, the problem, oh god, man, I have a short-term memory loss problem of fucking at the moment. Not like a major one or anything. Forgot what I was saying. God, I almost want to pause the video and go back and just try to remember exactly what I was saying. So yeah, basically nothing would have existed if the simulations would have been any worse, and that's why we're basically on hanging by a grain of sand. Is because the simulations were so bad. They're horrible. They're absolutely they're so bad. Remember, when I say the simulations, we're talking the actions of people that they are to decide what is actually to be expected. Okay, so remember, every time you roll that dice, when that dice is rolling on that one roll, it's just one roll. Same with this universe. That's one roll. If it's just you go rolling it again, it's always going to be a little bit different, a little bit different, a little bit different. Okay, so that is another thing of what he's trying to make known. Oh yeah. It's in your perspective. That's what I had the short-term memory loss. So what is in your perspective of is everyone is always wondering, like, what would it be like if nothing existed, or what is it going to be like when we die, or basically, that's what everyone's normally contemplates. But the truth of the matter is, if nothing exists, you're never going to know why, and it's never going to matter. It would never matter. And this is what I'm trying to explain of, oh, you have the perspective of that. So do I. And what I mean by that is where me and you are a little bit alike and similar and connected is we all waited because we figured out what was actually expected. So what is actually expected is the Big Bang. So let's just say, okay, this is a representation symbolic of the Big Bang, so it supposedly looks more like comes blasting out, kind of more like a pyramid-ish everything, and then you reach that point of nothing. So my concept is the beginning, let's say we're going to say in representation, marks a spot that we correlate to that of which we know of. And this is that of which we know of, the point of nothing. Now, what that also means is from this point up into this point, what is it? Fucking 11 billion years? 11 billion. It's something like that. Don't take my word for it. It doesn't matter. This is where me and you are alike. Okay, and this is what he was trying to show everybody so we could understand. So everyone's always like, well, how do you know that that everything is always going to exist, or there won't ever be a point where nothing ever exists? And what he was showing us is, I know that there won't ever be a point that nothing exists, because we already had a point at which nothing already existed. So he showed us that because he's trying to make sure that everybody understands that, so they don't freak out about it. Because that's what happens when you ask somebody, hey man, I got a question with something. So there he goes. He answers the questions. How do you know that nothing is ever going to exist, or everything's always going to exist? So then he goes and shows us, I know that nothing is never ever not ever going to exist again, because there was already a point of nothing to exist. So it will never go back to nothing. It can never go back to nothing. So that's what he's trying to explain and show everybody is, nobody needs to be afraid of their reaching the point of nothing that ever existing, because that point already is unexistent, since it's overridden. It's not possible to not exist anymore once it's already been, started. Once it's started, you don't go back. Why would he go back? All right, see, God is the type of guy, he goes forward, right? So he's trying to tell everybody, like, guys, why would I go fucking back? I go forward. That's what he's showing everybody. Dude, I go forward. I'm not going back. Nobody needs to be afraid that nothing is ever going to exist. And that worries people. And that was one of a really big fear of mine when I was a kid, is I used to think, oh man, what if nothing existed? And what if nothing's ever going to exist after we die? And this is where he had to explain in vivid detail. And this is where I was talking about, like, me and you are the same. So he gave us perspective on it, because everybody was so confused about, not existing. And this is where he makes it so now you understand. He's explaining, if nothing exists, it doesn't matter. It will never matter, because you're never going to know. And we have perspective on that. You know why? Because for 11 billion years, or as long as till you reach that point of nothing, we had absolutely no problem making it through this long stretch without even knowing what was actually as expected. So that's what he's trying to explain. He's explaining and proving, like, if man, I almost got sidetracked here. Everything is actually as expected. So that's what he was proving. Okay? So there would be no difference. There would be no difference if we were to return back to nothing. That's what he's showing us. He says, don't be afraid to go back to nothing, because you came from nothing. So he needs to make sure, like, everyone doesn't freak out about that so much, because everybody freaks out about that. It's like, don't worry, guys, we're not going back to nothing. It's not possible. We're never. Everybody always question him, well, how do you know that that's actually as expected? How do you know that's actually as expected? And he finally gave everybody their space, and he said, fine, you guys want to be so stupid and hard-headed and warful, and that's the biggest reason why he had to, let everything blow up like a bomb in everybody's face, is because it was so harmful in war. Fights, destroying things, to where he's not putting up with it. He is not putting up with going back to the point of nothing. He's like, you know what? We came from nothing, and we are never fucking going back, and I don't want to hear that shit again. So when we got all these people running around trying to go back to nothing, what does that mean? Oh, I want to go back to nothing. Killing each other, fighting each other, not caring that nothing's ever going to exist. You don't know that nothing's ever going to exist or go back to nothing, so you can't take that argument, because that's not what it is. That is not what is actually as expected. So on my final conclusion of what I'm putting into perspective is he wanted to show us, so we knew what was actually as expected. So now we know, like, guess what? If nothing exists for 11 billion years, well, within that 11 billion years, no one will ever know anything. Therefore, if this number is any different, it will be relative to the number that it is attached to. It doesn't matter if it's infinite. People don't fucking get that. It don't matter if it's infinite. If it's infinite amounts of fucking years that there's nothing, well, then between that beginning and that end, which there is no end, that's the problem, then no one will ever know. Alright, well, I hope you disbelievers are so happy for being such fucking negative people, man. You guys need to cheer up.